All right, Michael Garratt is an ecologist and joins me now from Swindon in the United Kingdom. Great to have you on the program. Michael, how important are bees and how do they contribute to our daily lives?
Okay, yeah, well, thank you very much. That's a really interesting question. So at the University of Reading, we've been doing lots of research looking at bees and pollination. And globally, around 75% of the crops we eat depend on animal pollinators, and bees are one of these pollinators. So they're really important at pollinating crops like fruits and vegetables, and even things like coffee and chocolate. We wouldn't have high yields of these crops without these really important insects. So they're really fundamental to the food we eat. In fact, estimates of the kind of economic value of bees and other pollinators to crop production globally is somewhere between $200 and $500 billion a year. So they provide a really important ecosystem service, which generates all the food we eat, and is a really important economic contribution that they make as well.
We are seeing a decline in species of bees globally. Do we know why? What's the biggest threat facing bees?
Yes, so there's evidence emerging from around the world that some bees aren't doing all that well. So there's evidence that in some parts of the world and for some bee species, actually their populations are declining. So the number of bees we see is going down, but also the areas in which we find some of these bee species is also declining. There are a number of reasons why this may be, and it's more than likely a number of different factors that might be threatening bees and causing their numbers to decline. This includes, particularly for wild bees, habitat loss. So bees require lots of different habitats in which to thrive and exist, and lots of flowers to feed on to get pollen and nectar. And in many landscapes, particularly those that are intensively managed for agriculture, aren't as able to support those bees. So loss of habitat is an important threat to bees and other pollinators. But other factors are potentially reducing their numbers or causing them to decline as well. And of course, climate change is a really important factor that affects everything. Evidence has shown that bumblebees, which are a really important group of bee species that pollinate lots of different crops, actually in parts of the world, the areas where we're now finding bumblebees is declining and becoming smaller because of climate change, and increased temperatures are making it less hospitable for them to live. And then, of course, other factors threaten bees as well, such as diseases, and also the use of pesticides has been shown to have a negative effect on bees as well. So it's a number of factors, and it's no one factor. It's more than likely a combination of these factors that's affecting our bees and pollinators.
You talked about how important bees are for many of the foods that we eat. What would a world without bees look like?
Yeah, I mean, their contribution to food production is really important. It's important to understand, I guess, that some of the crops that we grow and eat and that are really important, like maize and rice and wheat, these aren't actually pollinated by bees or other insects. They're wind pollinated. So without bees and other pollinators, we'd still be able to grow these crops potentially. But it's those crops like fruits and vegetables which are really nutritionally important and high energy crops. And these are the ones that are really reliant on bees and other pollinators for that pollination. So if bee numbers were to decline or we were to lose bee species, then actually our capacity to grow these really nutritious crops would be really constrained, and we'd have less food available.
All right. Thank you so much for some very important information. Michael Garratt joining us from the UK.